Welcome back, or welcome to another episode of the Success Times Happiness podcast. I am your host, Richard Thompson, and today we are doing a solo episode all about when to persist or when to pivot. And my life is littered with these crossroad decisions. And so I thought I would take you through the process, I guess, of how I make decisions, big life decisions in terms of these crossroads, and when to keep strong on the path that we're going or whether to deviate and do something else. So I hope you really enjoy it and we'll get into it. Feel free to ask me any questions in the comments or sending me a direct message if you have any thoughts about the way that you get through these sort of crossroads in your life. Because I don't think it's unique to me. I think a lot of people do go through these sort of existential crises or existential decision-making points in their life. And most people maybe just stay on the path and just keep going. Fortunately or unfortunately, I'm much more critical of the current status or the status quo and question that a lot. And so I guess in my history, graduated from university with law and accounting, became a lawyer. That obviously for a lot of people could have just been the career path until they retired at 70. And a lot of hours would have been sunk into that. That changed once I became a father. At the time, working full-time as a lawyer in my career, and I was working part-time in the spare hours of a day as doing triathlon coaching online for a dozen athletes. It was probably the very first time that I had to make a really, really big life decision in terms of whether I just stay the course as a lawyer or whether I shake things up, I guess, and leave the profession and work and start a business, create the online coaching business into something much bigger than it was. And I probably went through these ideas or these thoughts subconsciously or at least automatically without putting a process in place, because it was a big decision, but I definitely went through a process where I was very comfortable with the decision that I made, which was to leave law and to coach full time, which was, I think, beneficial in terms of getting clarity as to what I wanted to do. Fast forward to now where the situation's almost reversed, where I don't know whether I want to do coaching full time going forward. I don't know whether I want to continue with personal athletic dreams or desires going forward with Ultraman. And I don't know whether I want to get back into the law either. So I'm sort of in that position very much. I almost want to be a listener of this podcast in the hope that it provides me clarity to where I am now. But I reflect back in 2016 where I made that decision and thinking about the ways that I did that and the processes I did that. So the first thought was getting really clear with what you want in life. And that is a much more difficult exercise than you would originally or initially think. So that process would be to sit at the end of your bed, close your eyes, and think about what is it that you want in life. Let's say it's a clean slate. You've got certain locked-in responsibilities, primarily as a parent, if that's the case. But to sit and think to yourself, what are the pain points? What are the things? If I could create a life that would be just my dream, and not everything obviously is going to be smooth sailing, but what is it at the moment that is a pain point? What is it that frustrates you with your situation with life or relationships or anything? And what would you change if you could? That will start fermenting, and that you'll start postulating what the future could look like if you allowed it to. And that's also, that comes back to values that we discussed in a previous episode, so definitely check that out. Whenever I am uncertain, I go back to those values and they're my 2 feet on the ground. And so, that's where I stand. And for me, if you don't want to go back, it's in the 2 primary values for me is integrity and making a difference. And so they are where I get to all the time. They help me carve out the best decisions in all situations. The other idea is you are the one that's in charge of your life. So you need to take full responsibility, like extreme responsibility of where you are up until this point. Not all of it may be your fault, but you need to take responsibility for it. And that's key, Because if you can take full responsibility for everything that's happened up into your life until now, then you will be fully aware that you have the ability, it's all up to you to create a life of your dreams going forward. Whereas if you don't take responsibility, you shirk away from that responsibility, then the power to create a beautiful life ahead of you somehow is out of your control in the same vein. So to sit there as well, to not only think about what your future beautiful life would look like, but also understand you have to take responsibility to where you are at this point. And then thirdly, an element of really harnessing truth with your life and to be able to identify what is true for you in terms of what you value and what matters to you going forward. And it's nothing to do with, following the career path because your family wants you to, or because you think that would give you some status or money or anything. Like if that's not true for you, then don't follow it. And the biggest part about all of this is about being clear of what you want and being true to that. Is sometimes if you can't get to that point, and this is what I've done, more recently, is if maybe the path isn't clear, but you definitely know what's not filling your cup up. So by sitting there what is draining your energy, draining your cup. And so you need to actively get rid of those things in your life that is taking that energy away, or that is draining your cup. You might not know what's going to fill it up in the future. You don't know. It may not be clear yet as to which path you should take, whether you should pivot or whether you should persist with what you're doing. But if there are things that are taking away from your energy or are bringing you down, whether that's people, events, experiences, whatever, then you need to actively get rid of them, get rid of the negative, so that it allows space for the positive. And then you need to be able to then go, okay, this is the dilemma, right? If you want to persist with what you're doing versus pivot, it's the fear of the unknown that really cripples you. And the worst thing you can do is just tread water. And it's whereas the better option in any event, whichever decision you make, is to go full noise at whichever direction that you point. So if you're going to persist with your life, with however it looks, you go fully invested into that, full noise into that. And that at least you won't die wondering whether or not that was the best way, or whether or not how it could have looked had you fully committed to the process. And that's in terms of any sort of avenue of life. But there's also a certain unknown as to how life would look if you pivoted. And so certainly, let's say for me, I don't know what my life would look like right now had I stayed in law for the last 7 years. I do know that because I pivoted at that point, I focused on the sport. I coached a lot of people to a lot of success, which brought me a lot of happiness, as well as my own self. We were able to, break that world record initially in 2017, take 2 world titles on Ultraman. I was a paid professional athlete for 3 years. I wouldn't have never experienced that had I stayed in law. The value of that journey, of that, let's say, of that pivot, is only valuable if that's what you believe is the right way forward. And obviously you're not going to take it unless you do think it's the right way forward. But it takes a certain amount of courage to go, yeah, let's do this. Let's not stay on the beaten path. Let's go make our own. Let's trailblaze and do our own thing. And a lot of and another exercise that I pay absolute homage to Tim Ferriss is fear setting. So number 1 is define your nightmare, the absolute worst that could happen if you did what you are considering. Number 2, what steps would you take to repair the damage to get things back on the upswing, even if it's temporary? Number 3, what are the outcomes or benefits, both temporary and permanent, of more probable scenarios? Number 4, if you were fired from your job today, what would you do to get things under financial control? And number 5, what are you putting off out of fear? And then finally, what is it costing you by not moving, by not pivoting? And what are you waiting for? And so by really expressing that idea of fear setting, of going, what is the worst case scenario here if I pivot or if I persist with what I'm doing? And being okay with that. Because I think a lot of the fear is of the unknown, And so if you can say, okay, I'm going to pivot from this job, or I'm going to do my own thing, or whatever the situation is, what is the worst case? And if you can accept that or have a plan to mitigate that, then you remove its power that it has over you, or the control that it has over you. And therefore, in theory, you don't have any more fear about going whichever way. So then it comes back to being really clear about what you want your life to look like. That's the thing as well. It's not fixed. Your future is not fixed. And so in itself is an enormous responsibility and the opportunity cost in the future that you may have by doing something as against something else. But part of me wishes that I wasn't so introspective, or just thought, I've got my law degree, I'll be a lawyer, and I'll be a lawyer for the next 50 years. And then I wouldn't have to keep considering life choices like this. But as I said, because of the pivot that I did in 2016, it opened up an enormous amount of success and joy and happiness in my life that I don't think I would have at that time experienced as a lawyer. So, and I got to spend so much time with my kids as they grew up, as they get, so I think, I don't have any regrets in terms of that, even if I do go back to law. But it's certainly that exercise that I think everyone should take, and you should take stock every 3 to 6 months, maybe 6 months, to go. And I think most people do it in around the New Year period yearly, but to go, am I on the right path here? And if not, how can I change things to make things different or better, obviously, to have more purpose and to have more fulfillment in your life. So to persist or to pivot is something that sits with me a lot, and I'm certainly in that place right now. And I guess I personally, I am not clear exactly what I want in the short to medium term future. So I need to do that exercise. I need to sit down and work out exactly what I want my life to look like, and see whether or not I pivot or persist. So that's about it. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, let me know. If you did, please share it with people that you think may enjoy it as well. And we'll continue on this path, this podcast path. It's really, it's a lovely experience with Cody, and to see you all listening and see the data that it's continually increasing and getting more and more listens, which is awesome. So thank you for coming along with the journey. And until next time, peace.